And some big news here developing in the political world. NBCUniversal announcing today it has broken ties with businessman and now Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump in response to comments he made about Mexican immigrants in the speech announcing his campaign.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
NBCUniversal's official statement today says, quote, at NBC, respect and dignity for all people are cornerstones of our values. Due to the recent derogatory statements by Donald Trump regarding immigrants, NBCUniversal is ending its business relationship with Mr. Trump. To that end, the annual Miss USA and Miss Universe pageants, which are part of a joint venture between NBC and Trump, will no longer air on NBC, end quote. Now, Trump was affiliated with NBC Entertainment, and NBCUniversal is the parent company of MSNBC. We want to play for you now Trump, who offered this reaction in Chicago today.
Well, I think NBC, frankly, I've had a great relationship with them. They didn't want me to run because they wanted to do The Apprentice. As you know, they renewed The Apprentice. But I just told them I cannot do The Apprentice because of the fact that I'm running. And as long as I'm running for president, they were not happy with it. They wanted me to do The Apprentice. And now, with my statements on immigration, which happen to be correct, they are going to take a different stance, and that's okay. I mean, whatever they want to do is okay with me. I've had a lot of great relationship with NBC. I think as far as ending the relationship, I have to do that, because my view on immigration is much different than the people at NBC.
Joining me now for political analysis of this breaking story is MSNBC's Jane Tim, who interviewed Donald Trump recently as he was preparing his campaign, and Huffington Post White House correspondent Sam Stein. Good day to you both. What is happening to Donald Trump as a candidate? And for people following the politics of this story, does this suggest that he sees himself as a serious candidate?
I mean, Donald Trump's never going to play by the rules here. And every time he puts out a statement like this, either, the letter we saw to Univision last week or this statement where he goes, by the way, NBC's weak, and my statements are correct. I mean, he's not playing by the standard rules of politics, which are to offend as least many people as you can, particularly the people you work with. But, I mean, he sees himself as a serious candidate, and the polls see him he is a serious candidate. But still, it's really early in this campaign, and there's definitely a Gawker effect here.
Sam, what do you make of that? I would say the polls don't mean much here. We know that Herman Cain and Rudy Giuliani and others have had early leads in the polls. But for people who thought that essentially Donald Trump only wanted to do this to make more money, quote unquote, this would seem to be a development that would cut against his bottom line, at least in the short term.
There's no way to quantify what this development is, because while he is losing his relationship with NBC, he certainly is demanding the media spotlight in ways that no other Republican presidential candidate has managed to do. And who knows what that means for his brand, or what kind of books he wants to sell, or what other future TV ventures he wants to have. The polls, as you mentioned, are totally meaningless. If we're going to focus on the polls that show him surging to second place in New Hampshire, we can't ignore the polls that continuously show him being the most reviled candidate in the Republican field as well. And so, I take it for what it is. This is a ingenious entertainer, someone who knows exactly how to command a media spotlight, and he's doing this right now really well, but possibly to the detriment of the Republican Party. I mean, he is undermining the Republican Party with the comments he's making about immigrants. There's no other way around it.
Jane, what do you think of the actual point of the controversy, which was that he comes out to announce his campaign and essentially is incredibly disrespectful and inaccurate about a very large number of people?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what the GOP came out, as Sam was saying, and said, we're not going to do this next election because this is what loses elections. But like I said, Trump doesn't really want to play with the GOP. He's running on that party campaign because, that's the crowded field, and it's the one that he maybe some of his views fit in well with, but he's not beholden to this party. He's not planning on really using anyone else's money but his own. I mean, and he doesn't really care who he offends. And with the Gawker effect, the fact that people are really just out there to see what crazy things is Trump going to say, I mean, that's what gets the crowds out, is what crazy things is he going to say. I mean, I reached out to a lot of people who supported him on Twitter and online and said, you know, what is it about Donald Trump that you think would make a great president? And they said, actually, I kind of just want to see if he'll like engage with me, if he'll chat with me. You know, my Facebook feed is filled with, I'm going to ironically support Donald Trump. I mean, these aren't really real supporters. It's those crazy statements that's getting people to these events.
Well, right. And Sam, isn't that the whole point? We've seen this tendency increase in recent years of people who are essentially using the primary process and the media's incessant coverage of it to enrich themselves or to get attention when they want to run. Trump was doing this, you might say, earlier than others. I don't think he's a serious presidential candidate now, nor has ever evinced any sign that he was in the past several cycles when he claimed to run and never did the real things that real candidates do.
This is just the meshing of reality TV and presidential politics. And, you know, in some respects, we're complicit in it because we're leading our show with it. But on the other hand, it's incredibly entertaining and something that we can't help but watch, if only because the truth of the matter is, as uncomfortable as it is to say, that his comments, his nasty comments about Mexican immigrants are shared. It's a sentiment that is shared by a portion of the electorate. And he's appealing to that portion in ways that no other presidential candidate can, and no other presidential candidate will even dare to do. And so that's what's boosting him up in places like New Hampshire, maybe Iowa. But there's great limitations to it. And it's not entirely clear to me or anyone else whether actually Donald Trump wants to be president or whether this is sort of a freak show vanity project that he's allowing himself to partake in. So, you know, yes, it's a fun thing to watch, but, you know, it's also a little bit frightening, too.
All right, Sam Stein and Jane Tim, thanks for joining us on this political story.